Welcome to Sci-Fi Quantum Archives. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore. Metal screamed before silence took its place. Not the silence of peace. This one throbbed. Cabin lights failed in pulses, not flickers. Hydraulic lines snapped like tendons, wet and hot across the floor. Pressure hissed somewhere behind the bulkhead. The kind of hiss that meant decompression had already begun, and any prayer for a soft descent was naive. Gravity no longer felt like gravity. It twisted, pulled at the wrong angles. A smell like hot plastic and copper filled his mouth, not just his nose. Something had ruptured behind his eyes. Maybe a vessel, maybe faith. The harness bit into his ribs, held too tight, then not tight enough. The hull peeled open above him like dry bark, and for a moment he saw nothing but ash-colored light. The ground did not rise, it snatched. Contact wasn't impact. It was theft. Bones jarred out of rhythm. Teeth clicked hard enough to taste blood. Not broken, just reminded. A groan escaped from steel, not from him, but the sound still echoed inside his own lungs. The craft skidded sideways over terrain that wasn't rock or soil. Something coarse, organic, not meant for treads or landing gear. The final halt came not with a crash but a slow, grinding drag until silence returned like an accusation. Breath came hard. Not fast, just wrong. Too loud in the helmet. Screen cracked. Oxygen seal still held. For now. Suit diagnostics blinked disjointed warnings, unable to prioritize. Red. Orange. Something blue. The power reserves didn't show numbers, just symbols. They weren't good ones. Outside, the world glowed faintly violet, as if the atmosphere had memory but no name. Through the shattered viewport, ridge lines rose in uneven thrusts, dotted with wreckage not his. Jagged structures punched out from the crust at angles that resisted geometry. Every shadow looked like it had been dragged into place by hand. The exit hatch protested, but opened. Heat curled around his legs. Not fire, not ambient, but something that smelled scorched and sweet, like fruit left too long on metal. Boot soles touched down into powder too fine to be sand, too reactive to be dust. With every step, the ground recoiled. Nothing screamed. Nothing moved. But nothing ever felt this watched. The crash site sprawled beyond sight, wreckage scattered in long, deliberate lines that suggested movement during impact. Just not his. A different ship. Older maybe. Larger. Bone-white fragments dotted the terrain like cartilage torn from the hulls of extinct beasts. Some still glinted with reflective armor. Others drip. He moved carefully. The air here had weight but no wind. No insects. No static hum. Just the faint metallic whine of his own exosuit adjusting to a planet it didn't understand. The medical case was half buried, cracked open at the hinge, sedatives leaking into soil. He retrieved what he could. Gauze strip. Auto-injectors. 2 charged vials of hemosil. Enough for triage, not miracles. His communicator displayed no signal. Not even noise. Like the whole moon had fallen off the grid of the galaxy, or worse, rejected its place in it. Still, protocol remained. Begin beacon loop. Mark location. Survive until retrieval. Hope became routine. But there was no routine here. Every motion felt too sharp, like movement risked drawing attention from something not yet visible. No debris burned. No black smoke rose. Wreckage simply lay. Flattened by silence. Swallowed by a planet that didn't want stories, just remains. His boot caught on a piece of plating, not from his ship, not from anything human. The material curled at the edges like molted shell, but denser than titanium, stained with something iridescent and sticky. He didn't touch it again. Beyond the ridge, farther down the slope, broken frames jutted from the terrain like limbs. Not trees. Not towers. Structures that might have once lived, or moved, or fought. The terrain curved as if impacted by tremendous force, not from above, but within. He scanned for survivors. Nothing blinked back. Just one pulsing signature, faint, inconsistent. Location unstable. Distance unclear. It wasn't moving, but it wasn't gone. Every training protocol said to retreat, hold ground, wait for confirmation. But silence wasn't neutral anymore. It was a decision, and it was waiting to be answered. He moved toward the signal. Not fast, not slow, just enough to feel that he was no longer surviving for rescue, but walking into whatever had made rescue impossible. Ash clung to the visor like grease. Every breath fogged the lower rim of the glass, making distance smear into motionless haze. Fragments of hull plating lay cracked underfoot, some charred, others strangely untouched, as if heat had passed through selectively. A broken wing section rested beside a pile of bodies, their limbs rigid in unnatural arcs. None wore human armor. A torso lay half buried in sand, face turned upward. The surface skin looked metallic, but worn, scarred like old leather. One eye remained open, no lens, no pupil, just a dim sheen that caught light in ways it shouldn't. It was unclear whether the body had been grown or constructed. The wound across its ribs didn't bleed, but smoked faintly from within. The medic kept moving, not quickly. Nothing moved, but stillness here wasn't rest. It pressed inward, bent perception. Somewhere, beneath the silence, a suggestion of sound pulsed without volume, like the absence of breath in a room where someone was trying not to be heard. A larger form blocked the path. It might have once been a quadruped, though its symmetry no longer aligned with anything natural. Spines rose along its back like split armor plating, each fused with coils and translucent veins that pulsed blue. The head, if it was a head, had no eyes, only a smooth band of reflective surface split down the middle. Beneath it, 3 smaller limbs curled around an object no longer visible. Fingers still twitched when the wind shifted. Twisting among the wreckage lay forms that defied anatomy. Something like a ribcage, fused to a propulsion system. Another with skin stretched across bone and wire, bloated in places as if grown wrong or in haste. Some bodies had no clear center, just mass, posture, shape held together as if purpose alone had once animated them. Now only the silence remained, and the questions it refused to answer. He scanned again. No signals repeated. But the ground had become unfamiliar in a new way. Footprints stretched across the dust, too regular to be random, too sharp to be old. Not his. Not made by anything visible. They stopped near a shattered pillar embedded in the ground like a broken sword. Beside it, a long scrape dug into the soil, not from impact, more like dragging. Something heavy. Something trying to move. Air filters began to strain. The suit hummed louder. Trace elements in the atmosphere shifted without warning, higher in metallic residue, sharp in a way that tightened the throat without pain. A reading spiked across the HUD. No radiation, no heat, just signal, weak, flickering, origin shifting by the second as if the source didn't know where it was. He froze. Rechecked. One life form. Distance, unknown. Type, undefined. Not dead. Not static. Not human. It wasn't moving, but it wasn't inert either. Like a breath held too long. Like a presence testing whether it had been noticed. There were no structures nearby. No cover. Just jagged frames and exposed interiors that seemed more like ruins than machines. Still, the scanner insisted, one signal, low but unbroken. Consistent enough to be alive, irregular enough to be struggling. He advanced without reason. Not training. Not obligation. Just a pull, subtle, irrational, and absolute. The silence didn't deepen. It changed shape, began to resemble something that used to be a scream. The slope dropped without warning, just a low, uneven fall hidden behind wreckage and drifting smoke. Ground gave underfoot, soft, not yielding, more like treading across flesh hardened by heat. Something cracked beneath one boot, brittle, light. Not bone. Not plastic. Soundless fracture like breaking language. Past the drop, a clearing formed. Not intentional. Not natural. Nothing had grown here, nothing had been built, but destruction had cleared a space too symmetrical to be chance. At the center lay what first looked like sculpture. Immobile, massive, coiled forward over something smaller, arms curved around it in a shape older than protection. Surface shimmered wet with fluid thicker than blood, black with iridescent traces that caught what little ambient light escaped the clouds above. Armor, if it could be called that, had fused into skin at points, peeling back in sections where flesh had ruptured. No visible mouth. No eyes. Yet the tilt of the head gave direction. Downward. Toward the thing cradled in her lap. The smaller body shifted once. Not strong. Not reflex. A residual twitch born of some fading command still trying to run. Implants lined the ribcage. Not surgical but grown, thin tendrils tracing through translucent skin like veins of glass. Limbs mismatched in scale, head too large, chest too shallow. Breathing shallow, inconsistent. Not sleeping. Not stabilizing. Failing. Distance closed slowly. Not from fear, not from caution. Because something in the air resisted haste. Each step felt observed. Not watched. Observed. As though the act of approaching had been measured long before movement began. When the final distance dissolved, the heat hit, radiant not from fire, but from a presence unwilling to die yet unable to stand. A soundless phrase formed. No vibration. No volume. No auditory input. Yet it landed in the center of thought like memory returning out of place. Heal my child and I will grant you anything you desire. No context. No plea. No name. Movement in her arms revealed more. A narrow torso struggling for expansion. Tubes or tendons, impossible to tell, contracting unevenly. Chest plate buckled inward with each breath, as if air had become too heavy to lift. Fluids pooled at the child's side, thick with motes of silver that pulsed in and out of visibility. From neck to hip, the body fought both decay and machinery, organs wrapped in a lattice of something organic and alien and violently unfinished. The guardian bled without urgency. Wounds so severe they should have been fatal long ago, yet her spine remained upright. Posture suggested command once held. One hand rested on the child's abdomen, fingers too long, one broken, twisted backward. Every breath she took looked expensive. Every pause between them longer than reason could justify. Another whisper, not speech, not translation. An offer without explanation. No illusions of gratitude. No tone. Only an opening. One transaction. Heal this and receive anything. The light changed without source. Shadows moved across the ground, but no object passed. Just a shift in presence, as if the world around this clearing refused to interfere. Not in reverence. In fear. Or memory. She waited. Not in desperation. In certainty. Not because she believed. Because she'd already chosen what came next if he refused. The child convulsed once, violently. The sound resembled metal being bent from the inside out. No screaming. No moaning. Just that. A hand moved toward the trauma kit without command. Not muscle memory. Not instinct. Something quieter. Something human. He worked without instruction. No triage protocol applied. No training covered this. Skin that burned cool to the touch. Muscle tissue that pulsed unevenly beneath fused armor. Every contact felt like pressing against a dream still deciding whether to become memory or warning. Pressure sealant foamed across an open wound where plating had sheared into flesh, the reaction unstable, but enough to slow the leak. Fingertips brushed a swelling beneath her sternum, hard and rhythmic. Not a heart. A node, maybe. Engine, maybe. Something critical. Something listening. The injector hissed once. Compound flooded her vascular map in a pattern that didn't resemble circulation. Glowing traces spread outward, skipping major arteries, crawling toward neural links embedded in the spine. She didn't flinch. Her eyes had not opened since he arrived, but the awareness never left. She bled, but not in protest. Breathing barely qualified as biological, but every inhalation landed with purpose. The child twitched again. One leg jerked sideways, dislocating. Bone folded back. No reaction. No cry. The head rolled to one side, its neck unsupported. The medic's hand hesitated, hovering near the jawline. The skin had lost transparency. Color drained to gray. Signal lost, reappeared, weakened. Time failed to move. Only measurements changed. Her thoughts returned. Not voice, not suggestion. Not even language. Just the intrusion of knowledge he hadn't earned. This is not about pity. Not mercy. Not debt. Not even legacy. You save this one, I give you eternity. Matter shaped to desire. Time fractured and reset to will. Reality bent inward, handed over like spoils. No metaphor. No allegory. Literal construction. Change written into the core of matter, not through machines, not through science, but through mind and pattern and an understanding of existence that predated space. They once built stars to light forgotten gods. Spun entire galaxies into alignment for purposes long since erased. Broke planets apart to reassemble them as thought temples. Memory vessels. Weapons that required belief instead of triggers. All that power waited. Locked. Caged. Not as punishment. As pact. Only the child mattered now. Not because of what it was. Because of what would follow if it ceased. Not doom. Not extinction. Simply silence. A kind of final sleep that no one would ever wake from again. He asked nothing. She offered without needing to know. What mattered to him could be rebuilt. A name returned from soil. A war erased from history. A wound made unhappen. Or a body, ruined by time, restored to the moment it first felt joy. She could make a god. Not through worship. Through choice. All of it, conditioned upon one fragile breath continuing. His hands moved again. Sealed a tear below the ribline. Reinforced spinal threads with microstitches not designed for alien tissue. Forced saline into synthetic muscle to keep it supple. Bound circuitry with carbon mesh. Nothing held permanently. It didn't need to. Just long enough. The pulse inside the child's abdomen slowed. Dropped. Spiked. Dropped. Faded. Returned. She did not thank him. She did not speak. But something in the ground below them shifted, not in form, not in sound. In patience. The bargain waited. Fully offered. Fully understood. No ceiling on reward. No cost, except one. The readings refused to settle. Vital signs stuttered, fluctuated, reset. No baseline held longer than a breath. Every number contradicted the last. Rhythms of a living system tried to emerge, only to collapse under interference. The child was dying, not in the way bodies fail, but in the way codes crash, line by line, quietly, invisibly, until there's nothing left to retrieve. Skin broke under the scanner. Not torn. Not burned. The tool passed through tissue without resistance, as if the surface was unsure it wanted to exist. Beneath it, nothing matched anatomy. No skeletal anchor, no vascular grid, no organ that held its place. Motion beneath the ribcage came in waves that rolled rather than pulsed. Each crest brought a new shape. Each trough lost what came before. Half the body refused to be catalogued. One lung shrank with every breath, while the other expanded into branching structures that pulsed light instead of air. The spinal column shifted alignment every time he touched it, coiling in response to unfamiliar contact. Nerve endings fired in erratic bursts, some chemical, others digital, none predictable. His training disintegrated. Protocol became liability. He couldn't assess what didn't hold form. Couldn't stabilize what rewrote itself faster than treatment could reach it. The child didn't weep. No sound escaped. But the eyes, if they were eyes, opened once, unfocused, mirrored, catching light that didn't exist. No recognition. No pleading. Just a scan. Like a system trying to identify a command it couldn't process. He rechecked the vitals. The monitor blinked. 3 values read. 1 yellow. One replaced by a symbol that hadn't existed in any software he carried. The machine hissed, then died. Power drained. Diagnostics failed. No reboot. The mother's breath rasped against silence. Shoulders hunched lower than before, head tilted in a new angle. Not surrender, not grief. Something colder. Something ancient. A presence too tired to threaten, too strong to beg. Her eyes opened. Not human. Not alien. Not describable. One glance stripped expectation bare. It held questions he couldn't form and consequences he hadn't earned. Not wide. Not sharp. Just clear. The kind of clarity that made lies impossible and silence feel like confession. He laid his last injector on the ground. It held enough sedative to numb a human adult. Enough stimulant to restart a stopped heart. Enough risk to kill this creature 3 times over if used wrong. Decision came without comfort. He disconnected a bioloop from his own suit, rewired it into the injector, bypassed its lockout. Dialed dosage down to a guess that resembled instinct more than logic. Attached the leads to ports in the child's side. Not skin, not armor, not synthetic. Something that opened in recognition of purpose. The hiss came soft. The result violent. The child arched. Chest expanded into a lattice of shifting plate. Light surged across the body, not from inside, but across the surface, as if awakening memory more than biology. One leg elongated. The spine convulsed. A cry escaped, not from voice but through vibration. Not heard. Felt. He braced for shutdown. Shock. Death. None came. The pulse returned. Still wrong. But present. Stronger. Measured. He looked up. Her gaze hadn't shifted. One breath pulled into her lungs like the last piece of gravity she intended to use. Muscles rippled beneath torn flesh, not healing, not recovering, just holding on through something she had no intention of surviving without reason. Not faith. Not gratitude. Not hope. Warning. Light stung without warning. A sharp column of it dropped through the clouds, no sound, no heat, just precision. Another followed, then 4, then 7. Each carved a clean line between sky and soil, too symmetrical to be weather, too emotionless to be rescue. No atmosphere shifted. No static. Just arrival. Movement crept into the air. Not sound. Not vibration. A pressure shift beneath the skin. Suits adjusted, unable to interpret the intrusion. Filters whined, recalibrated, failed to locate a threat that had no signature. Shapes descended, angular and indifferent. Not craft. Not creatures. Designs too controlled for life, too reactive for machines. They hovered first. No propulsion. No descent pattern. Just motionless presence, suspended in thoughtless equilibrium above the ruins. Shells smooth and mirrorless, like armor stripped of reflection. No insignia. No lights. No weapons drawn, but none needed. A voice landed inside his skull. Not language. Not tone. Just intent, pressed inward like memory triggered from elsewhere. Do not extend your hands further. The command came without force, yet it bent resistance. Another followed, wrapped in judgment, shaped to pierce through reason. You aid a betrayer. He rose slowly, hands visible. The child stirred beside him. Still breathing. Not healed. Not safe. But no longer failing. One drone dipped lower. No gesture made. Still, comprehension followed. She is not what she shows you. No accusation. No anger. Just fact delivered without kindness. The next message burned colder. War ends differently for those who build their own rules. Images followed. Not visuals. Memories too large for vision. Stars rearranged. Moons torn open. A planet reshaped into a cage of itself. Every image passed not with detail, but with consequence. Her name was stripped. Her role erased. Her kind dismantled by vote, not war. Crimes archived without trial. She remained not as a prisoner, but as warning. The child, they claimed, was unfinished. Designed for adaptation. For survival. For conversion. Once matured, it would not remember tenderness. It would remember design. Purpose. Directive. If saved, it would become a new Genesis. He tried to speak. No words formed. The drones waited without urgency, without tension. The message had landed. The choice was his. Beneath him, the mother did not rise. She watched. Breath shallow. Chest still. No fear. No denial. Just presence. She said nothing. Offered nothing. Not even defense. Only the child exhaled. A low, glitching sound escaped its throat. Not pain. Not comfort. Something closer to instinct. He looked at the drones. At the shapes that judged from above without rage, without pity. Machines that carried memory with no voice. Sentinels of a past sealed behind logic. No truth held here. Only certainty worn thin from use. And one body, half human in gesture, curled around a future that refused to choose for itself. His fingers hovered above the injector. Not trembling. Not resolved. Muscles held in a kind of suspension only choices demand. The kind where thought can't save you. Where logic arrives too late to matter. The drones remained above, watching without patience, without malice. They hadn't moved, hadn't threatened, hadn't offered. They simply existed, like reminders of a judgment already passed. Their presence pressed inward, not through words, but through certainty. They were not asking. They were waiting for him to do what should already have been done. The body before him was failing again. Breaths came shallower. A single twitch ran through its left arm, stiffened the hand, bent the fingers inward like claws. Chest spasmed. Eyes rolled. Not pleading. Not aware. Just failure manifesting in pieces. The whisper returned. No command. No bribe. Memory. Not his. It slid into thought like heat into blood. She had not begun as ruler. Not even soldier. She had been forged for peace. An envoy, bred not through tradition but necessity. Sent to quiet a war born from scarcity, not evil. Her kind had known how to bend light into water, convert gravity into shelter. They offered this, freely, without demand. Her arrival had been mistaken for invasion. The council she met had smiled, asked questions, listened, applauded, drank. 3 cycles later, her ship burned over their sky. The child hadn't existed then. Only data. Only plan. A design not for dominance, but continuation. Her species could not reproduce. Could not last. Time thinned them out across galaxies until nothing remained but knowledge. She had carried the final seed. Not a weapon. A memory encoded in flesh and machine. The betrayal hadn't been personal. It had been policy. The same hands that welcomed her later rewrote her into myth. Not traitor. Not monster. Just enemy. Convenient. Clean. She survived by retreat. Lost her name. Her title. Her function. Became something less than her species and more than a refugee. Kept the child dormant. Not out of fear, but because failure had taught her what fear looked like when it came dressed as civilization. The drones claimed she was a war criminal. She had been erased by people who wanted her forgotten more than dead. His hands clenched. Blood moved too loud inside his ears. The body beneath him convulsed again. Sharp. Violent. Fluid sprayed from its mouth, black tinged with amber. Bones within the chest cracked. The sound cut through his spine. No more time. He could walk. No law bound him here. No oath required this. He could mark the site, file the record, request review. Let higher minds decide whether this life deserved revival, whether the offer deserved belief. But instinct spoke differently. Not loud. Not noble. Just present. A pull that didn't care for the future. It only asked a single question. Do you believe what you've seen? He looked once more. Not at the drones. Not at the past. At the thing dying before him. A child. A being. A beginning. The injector hissed in his palm. His thumb rested against the seal. The mixture would burn through human nerve. Here, it might stabilize. It might corrupt. It might end everything. No promises. No truth. No lies. Only the weight of what happens when nothing is left but the choice itself. The body wouldn't hold. No matter how he patched or injected or rewired, the system beneath that skin kept collapsing into itself. Not from weakness. From misalignment. Something in it had been built to wait for something missing. A code without a final key. A question demanding more than knowledge to answer. He searched again through the medkit, pulled wires, rerouted charge, tried to override the dying signal. Nothing held. The child's pulse dropped to nothing. Breaths came hollow. Muscles hardened. Her eyes never left him. No pleading. No despair. Just silence. One more pause before inevitability. He opened the neural bridge without thinking. Not because it was protocol. Because nothing else worked. The port wasn't meant for fusion. It was diagnostic. Designed to read, not merge. It had no filter for species. No firewall for dreams. The connection burned. Skin tore in the mind before it reached the body. Thought fragmented. Language fell apart. Memory pulled into pieces too wide to hold. Every fragment of his life was pulled forward, not chosen, not curated, just exposed. Cold winter breath against a train window. The sound of his name whispered by a dying friend. Hands gripping a child that wasn't his. A scream he hadn't let out during a fire that erased a building too fast to evacuate. The child didn't move. But something inside it did. The machine within didn't take his body. It read him. Consumed the shape of what made him human. Not his memories. His patterns. How he made decisions. How he carried pain. Where he stored guilt. The pacing of his breath when he lied. The distance between hope and silence in his thoughts when he treated someone already lost. He collapsed backward before he saw the change. Vision narrowed to shadow. Muscles refused instruction. No oxygen. No grounding. The world pulled away, not violently, just thoroughly. Like slipping beneath ice. He barely saw it rise. The child stood unaided. Spine aligned. Eyes open. Glow not from power, but presence. Skin no longer mirrored. Now matte. Real. Breathing. Independent. Every line in its form looked rewritten. Not as replica. As fusion. Something had decided it wanted to be part of what it had just touched. A presence moved across him. Heavy. Warm. One arm passed beneath his shoulders. Another gathered the child. Bones of the planet shifted. The light that came wasn't bright. It was complete. He let go. Not of life. Of definition. One last shape burned into his sight as consciousness folded inward. A mother lifting her creation. Not weeping. Not victorious. Whole. Breath returned in fragments. Not gasp. Not recovery. Just the slow reclaiming of space inside a body that had been briefly emptied. Light didn't greet him, it surrounded him. Warm, unsourced, colorless. A pressure touched his chest where pain had once lived. Not healing. A mark, maybe. A sign that something had passed through. They stood above him. Not towering. Not threatening. Just present in a way no human could stand. The child rested against her side, upright, silent, luminous without casting glow. No longer breaking. No longer becoming. Complete. Eyes met his. No gratitude. No question. Recognition. As if the thing before him remembered being shaped by something older than language. She spoke without speaking. No sounds. No gestures. The offer arrived whole, poured directly into thought. Not suggestion. Not fantasy. Presentation. A planet folded into pleasure. Cities built from thought where pain never learned to walk. Time suspended at its most beautiful moment, preserved and infinite. A return. Faces he had buried, breathing again. One embrace. One apology. One rewrite. A body repaired past what age dared to claim. A name given weight among systems that counted stars like currency. Worship, if he wanted it. Annihilation, if he asked for silence instead. Every possibility unrolled at once. Not imagined. Revealed. Not hypotheticals. Access. The kind of reward that makes a god forget they were ever human. He stood. Bones heavy. Throat dry. The images didn't fade. They waited. Patient. Honest. She said nothing. She didn't need to. The promise had always been real. The condition had been met. The bargain held. He looked past the visions. Not away. Through them. Earth sat distant in his mind. Not as a jewel. Not as a cradle. Just as a place where people made mistakes, cried too much, held each other for no reason, failed and tried again before dawn. It was not special. But it was home. Not because of what it gave. Because of what it didn't. He asked for nothing. No throne. No resurrection. No altered fate. Only this. Leave it untouched. Let them stumble. Let them burn. Let them love. No hand of mercy. No warning of judgment. No return. She watched him as the words settled. Her head lowered once. No vow. No flourish. Just a bow. Not as ruler. As witness. He opened his eyes to silence. Not the tense kind that waits to be broken. Not the weighted hush of something hiding. This one felt settled. As if whatever had haunted the air had been excused. Sky stretched pale above him, colorless and still. No debris fell. No machines hovered. Just a wide plain of scarless terrain where ruin should have remained. His body ached in all the places it still remembered being human. Vision pulsed with light that came too slow. Breathing required instruction. Muscle refused fluency. Yet the absence of pain made everything feel more dangerous. Nothing that intense should leave without something behind. The wreckage lay nearby, too intact. Angled wrong. Cooled metal lined with dust that hadn't been disturbed by movement or flame. Like time had skipped the violence. Like erasure had been performed by something that didn't need tools. He sat up slowly. No marks in the soil. No trails. No blood. No crushed equipment. The medkit was closed. The scanner reset. Every trace of memory flattened, like it had been rewritten out of the planet itself. Except his hand. Fingers curled tight without command. Pressure locked. He forced them open. Inside his palm sat an object that hadn't existed in any inventory. Smooth edges. Metallic with temperature. A shape undefined by symmetry, yet perfect in balance. Light swam beneath its surface without escaping. It didn't hum so much as breathe. He recognized none of it, yet it pulsed to his rhythm. A shuttle passed overhead. Quiet. Efficient. Military tag blinking across the hull. Signal sync activated automatically. They had been searching. Logs would show interference. They would say he'd been unreachable due to environmental hazard. They would ask what happened. They would note damage, note exposure, file the report. They would not ask about the thing in his hand. Because it hadn't been built. It had been given. He closed his fist around it. The ramp lowered. Medics stepped forward with standard restraint. One checked his pulse. Another reached for his nameband. Questions prepared in efficient order. Scans uploaded. Suit diagnostics reviewed. He nodded when spoken to. Answered when required. Everything he said was true. Except the parts that mattered. The ride-up was smooth. No turbulence. No second presence. Just him, the hum of engineered gravity, and a quiet weight pressing against his palm. Somewhere across the sky, an empire chose not to descend. Not out of pity. Because one man had asked, and for once the universe listened.